See, this is the problem with going over what my mother and father did to me. It is so real that every time I have to explain this to a doctor or a new person, I have flashbacks of my mother giving me pills in a hallway or near a kitchen table, like a hallway slash kitchen table. I remember coming back to a room with a couch to my right and a chair to my left with my father relaxed in the chair, Batman Mr. Freeze getting put on, my mother relaxed on the couch, both looking kind of tipsy-ish. I didn't know about the alcohol problem until much older, so I didn't really realize what that could be until much older, but maybe they're not buzzed. But they better have some excuse because what happens next, it's fucking up my stomach. The PTSD is so bad, it's bringing my stomach up and, oh. So my mother gave me some pills. I then lose the ability to see. No more eyesight. I can't make out the TV. I can't make out my hand. My mother looks like a blur. My father looks like a blur. I'm scared. I'm fucking scared. So, I start screaming for help. Help! 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 I can't talk. I can't. And my tongue is completely numb. My nervous system is fried. So I try to stand up and I can't. I continue to fall back down. I can't stand up. And I'm continue trying to scream for help, but only numb, dumb noises are coming out because my whole mouth is numb and I can't feel my nervous system anymore. At this point, I try to get over to my father for help. Well, my mother picks up a phone and calls for medical professionals to see what she should do. The doctors and the medical professionals told her to bring me to the emergency room because what my mother was talking about was nonsense. My mother knew nothing about the situation because she never did any testing. She never brought me to the doctor. She came up with a loopy fantasy, used it to cover up her own mistake, and then everybody bought her bullshit. Yes, my mother slipped me pills because she wanted me to go to sleep. That way she could change the channel. And oh boy, did I go to sleep. My breathing slowed down. I lost my ability to feel my whole nervous system. I ended up going to a pile of newspapers. I literally passed out just as my mother said they don't know what they're talking about and hang up. Then I brought this up at doctor's offices. I brought it up with my mother. I brought it up in front of my father. I brought it up at another doctor. Brought it up at another doctor. And each time, my mother lied and manipulated. Oh, it's just an allergy attack to a combo of medications. So the doctor then asks, oh, what were those medications? And my mother's answer was, oh, I don't know. Well, you think you could bring me a list? No, no, it's not that important. No, 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 it's not important. No, no, no. We're not going to look into this. No, no, no. So my mother, her son, has lost the ability to see, lost the ability to feel his nervous system. He lost the ability to walk, talk, move. His breathing slowed down and he went unconscious suddenly. And my mother thought this was fine because she got to change the channel of the TV. She didn't have to watch a kid show anymore, so it's fine to leave me dying on a pile of newspapers because she slipped me a drug in my meds. And there's a counteraction because, yes, there was a counteraction to medications that day. She slipped me an opiate with things like Thorazine and Seroquel and Ritalin and Xanax. Yes, a 7-year-old was slipped downers or something really bad that interfered with all my medications, jumping into an overdose. Then my mother kept me on these same medications, and nothing happened the next day, nothing happened the next day, and my whole entire life, I've been on these same meds from that day. Everything from Wellbutrin to Risperidone to Thorazine to Ritalin. I've been on all these same medications, and I've never had this mysterious allergy attack again. Only when my mother was messing around with pills, and I knew my mother was doing this because not only did she give me pills mixed into my regular doses, sometimes when I had to do something important, like go to my adoption party and see a bunch of family members, she would give me drugs as well before we got in the car. I would get so drowsy I would pass the fuck out in the car. Then we got to this adoption small building where they put me on a wooden bench where I passed out. And then they called me out of it. People are leaving. There's almost nobody left in this building now. And they're picking me up, telling me it's over. I'm adopted, and this is only part of the adoption agreement. This is one part of it. Then afterwards, I get back into the car. I'm falling back asleep. Then we get to the adoption party, and I am so drowsy that I'm falling asleep, literally passing out, wanting to find a place on the ground. I've now passed out at the adoption place. I've now passed out on the car twice. So now I want to fall asleep and pass out again, but I can't because I'm at a birthday party for myself. It's really called an adoption party, but gifts are everywhere for me. People are having fun. I really was looking forward to something like this, but now I can't because all I want to do is curl up and pass out because my mother gave me drugs again. And then how old am I? 7 years old once again, before we moved to Texas. But then, once again, I'm bringing this up to doctors. Teachers are noticing what my mother is doing is wrong. They're putting me in physical therapy, speech therapy. They're asking me too many questions. So my mother puts me in ballet and then uproots me to Texas first chance she gets. But then I speak up to the doctors in Texas. Yes, my regular primary care, one of the doctors, I spoke up in front of my mother in Texas. And then shortly later, she's finding a place in New Mexico 6 months later, a year later, to shove me in. Then, after New Mexico happens and I get hurt up there, then she brings me to Maine so they can sell some houses. I don't get no education, no extension. I've now gone a total of 3 years in my life with no education. I've redone first grade unnecessarily. I've now missed out on 2 years in Agunquit and New Mexico. And then after I miss all that school and I literally have no structure, we moved to Chelmsford, and one of those schools just scams my father into giving him money and also scams the system. I don't know if my father was paying for that small little school where there was only 12 kids in my class, and I was only, when we moved right to Chelmsford, this is right in the beginning, this is one of the first schools I went to in Massachusetts, maybe the first or second, very small school. Well, we had no classes, so I can't tell you what grade it was because literally we never had a class. We never did any of that. We got to play Yu-Gi-Oh cards, toys. Kids brought in Bionicles. We'd play wiffle bat in the front. We would go make soap with this physical therapist that would come by once a week for an hour. She would have us make soap or have us put our hands in jelly. Or one time she had us taste chips blindfolded. And this was all we did for the entire year. No books, no classes, no reading, no math, nothing. It was a scam to get money where the teacher literally was not teaching. She would go home for the day right after dropping us off in the classroom, or actually, maybe she didn't go home, but she left. She would leave the door and we wouldn't see her all day. God, my stomach, I'm gonna puke again. I took a Zofran, so I thought that would do it so I could take my other meds, but I'm going to have to stop this video because it's really affecting me. I mean, I've done these videos, I've talked about this many times, but what really hurts me more is I'm very open about this with my father. I'm able to talk to him about it, but then they just call it fantasies and they go back and they're sticking their head up their own ass. Meanwhile, I'm left to die because of what they did and the things and choices they made. I did not choose to be given pills and get OD'd and have my body destroyed by my own mother. But my father pretends like it's my fault that I had a crazy adopted mother that was doing wrong things to me, that she was violating my body. Yes, victim blaming. My own father blames me, the victim, for what my mother was doing to me, and all my injuries from what my mother did to me, those are all my fault too. If an injury I occurred at age 7 happened to me, it must be my fault. I was born with it. It was the drugs. It's some mental illness. I'm making it up. It's a fantasy. I don't want to hear it. That's my father's opinion. He wants his son to die for what his second wife did right after she died of liver failure from popping pills and alcohol, after he's watched all these terrible things be done to me right in front of him, after his own grandson had to watch me get beat with a ruler and had to cry to me and tell me that it's wrong for my mother to be beating me with a ruler for no reason other than my mother is making up a fantasy again, and she's beating me in another room for kicks for nothing that actually happened. I'm just playing with Seth someplace else. She calls me in, brings me in, starts to beat me for no apparent reason. Just making up stories my mother's doing, and now she's beating a child with a ruler. My nephew, her grandson, sees this and breaks down crying. Crying because there's no reason for it. I didn't do anything. I'm not in trouble. She just is trying to get some thrills. Now, what she was really doing is trying to project power in front of Seth. So then Seth would go and tell Tim, and then everybody could say that she's some powerful mother who has a full control over everything, and she can beat her son with a ruler, and he will do whatever she says. When I say jump off a cliff, my son will jump off a cliff. If I tell my son to take poisonous pills, he takes the poisonous pills. If I tell my son to go into a program in New Mexico and freeze in the woods, he goes in the program in New Mexico and freezes in the woods. If I tell my son to not go to school and let me home teach him and not complain, he gets home teached. No matter what it is, I have full control over my son's life. This is what my mother made sure to let everybody know. She had full control over my health care, my behaviors, my thoughts. She even tried to control my psyche. I'm not even kidding. The fucked up psyche bullshit that she did was really, really fucked up. Like when she took my swimming medal from me. Yes, my own mother took her son's swimming medal away from him, all because he came in the room and said, Mom, I want you to see my swimming medal I won in the orphanage. And instead of saying, good job, she steals the medal, calls me a liar, calls me a thief, says that only an African American could have that medal, that it has to be the African American kid that stayed here, can't be yours. And on top of this, then she makes up a mental illness and spreads it from place to place for years after all I'm trying to do is show my mother an accomplishment that I had. That is fucking horrible to do to your child who's only 6 years old, 7 years old. That's terrible. That's going to cause a lifetime of harm to his psyche. Luckily, I knew later, about at the age of 14, to throw all my mother's lesson in the trash. And I learned at about the age 14 that my mother was crazy. But I wasn't sure what type of crazy it was, and I didn't know how to get help for her. Instead, they're just shoveling psychiatric meds and bullshit at me. More therapy, more psychiatric pills, more pills, more pills, more pills, hospital, more pills, hospital, more pills. That was me. Meanwhile, my mother and father go off the rails, and nobody tries to bring them back on. So nobody has a clue of what's going on, because the problem isn't me. The problem is my mother. If you talk to the schools or the programs, they'll tell you that I'm the goody two-shoes kid who all the other kids beat up because he's always honest, he's truthful, he plays with action figures, he doesn't really get into trouble. The worst thing Zach ever did in the program was smoke cigarettes. The worst thing I ever did in the 19-year-old program is smoke weed. That's the worst thing I ever do, and I help out. I do the extra effort. I help other kids. I help other students. I give up my TV time freely. I was always the last one to pick a TV. And the whole time I lived in Haverhill, I almost never got to pick the TV. I had to go to another room, and me and 3 kids would work it out because the main TV hooked up to the cable. We just gave up. We didn't want to fight. We didn't want to argue. That wasn't who we were. We were the goody two-shoes kids. Well, me and one other kid, my roommate. That's why they put us together. Because he was 13, but looked like he should have been like 16 and had giant feet. But he was a definite goody two-shoes just like me. We both started playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Nobody else played Yu-Gi-Oh! They played Smoke the Cigarette. They played Put on the Masks and beat each other under a bridge. They played Go Hang Out with the teenagers down the street who were smoking weed. Meanwhile, I played Let's go to the pharmacy and get a lollipop. Let's go get a cigarette from Market Basket with my ID. Let's go under the bridge and see if we can find a CD player like I did before. Yes, I used to go under the bridge and find old junk, and a lot of times it would work. I found a CD player. I found a warm case of beer that was never touched. These are all just stashed away because homeless people stash them away and expect them to be there when they come back at night. Well, they didn't expect a scavenger hunt kid to like doing this, but the CD player is what we wanted. We also found a lot of like jewelry, like we found on the road a bracelet. So we used to go around Haverhill trying to find lost stuff on the ground. And if you go under the bridges and to where homeless people hang out, they lose the most. You would be surprised how much shit homeless people lose, all because they have nowhere to put it. Yes, these people not only are drunk, but they're carrying their life in their pocket. If they sit and something falls out of their pocket and they move on, that's everything to them. So yeah, I find a lot of lost items. We always gave it time and put it on the rock wall to see if somebody took it. Everything but the beer and the CD player. The beer and the CD player we didn't give time for. But everything else was put on the stone wall, and then we were... Oh, my stomach. Anyways, that's a happy memory to end on. That way I don't have to have any more PTSD screaming in my head, yelling at me, God damn, my father is jerk. I'm gonna die, and he doesn't even care. He's the cause of it. Literally, this is not okay. You don't get to cripple a child and then pretend like it's the child's fault. That's fucked up. And what's even worse is that I've been trying to speak up about this for 25 years. I spoke, and nobody does that. Nobody brings something up right when it happens at age 7. Oh, it happened? I told the doctor, I told them. Then we went back to the doctor at age 8. I told them again. We told them in Texas. Then I didn't see them again because in New Mexico I had no supervision. I had a seizure in the woods and nobody even noticed. Then in Maine, nobody's caring. They're all selling houses, having fun on the beach. Nobody cares about it again. Even when I'm falling to the ground from fireworks, screaming in pain, they're not bringing me to the fucking doctor. No, that might ruin their vacation and selling the house. No, they need to sell this house and have a vacation. Their son being sick can't get in the way with that. They just got 3 years vacation already. I mean, they frickin' just had me in a program for 18 months. That's a vacation for me right there. In those 18 months, they only had to see me for 18 hours. That's it. 18 hours for a whole year and a half is all my family saw me for while I was in New Mexico. So they had a big vacation. They could have handled this shit, but instead now they're making me go without more education. Okay, whatever. No big deal. Forgivement. Forgive, forget, forgive. But then my father tells me that none of this matters. It's all my fault that they didn't give me an education in New Mexico. It's all my fault. I didn't try hard enough. It's all my fault my mother gave me an overdose and fucked up my nervous system. I shouldn't have been taking pills at age 7 that my mother handed me in my hand. I should have known that my mother was evil, and I should have told her that the pills were wrong. And I should have known at the age of 7 years old every name of my medications and the reactions. I should have a medical type of knowledge at the age of 7 because my parents don't know the names of my medicine. They don't know what I'm taking, and they have no idea what's reacting with what. They're not even checking for side effects. I did not know this until I was about 16, 18 years old. At the age of 16 to 18, I looked back on this and I said, oh shit, when I was in Westford, they weren't knowing the names of my meds. They weren't knowing the reactions of my meds. They didn't check the side effects. They didn't even name them when I had an overdose. That is terrible parenting. You're just going to give your child a handful of pills and not even know what they're for, the names, none of it. And how do I know that they don't know this? Because the doctors have asked my mother and father for the names of the medications I was on during the overdose for years, and we've never got it. My mother says that it's a reaction to the medication and it's an allergy and that's what caused all this terrible stuff. My father just looked white and knew nothing about what was going on. All he knew is I slept on a pile of newspapers because my mother said the emergency people don't know what they're talking about. He'll be fine. Meanwhile, on top of this, my breathing is slowing down and I'm dying and my whole nervous system is being affected for life. If I was brought to the emergency room that day, I might still be the same that I was at age 5. But I'm not, because somebody gave me an overdose at a young age. Not only that, they repeated this behavior over and over and over and over. My mother did dangerous stuff with medications, with my body, and that is not my fault. I am not responsible for my mother and father slipping me drugs so they can watch TV. I am not responsible for my mother slipping me drugs because she doesn't want me talking at the adoption. I am not responsible for my mother giving me extra medications and drugs just because she wants to teach me a lesson. I am not responsible for all these druggings and all the damage that my mother did before I was even 10 years old. But yet, I have to hear the most traumatic bullshit in my life. I have to hear from my father, who knows that this is real. He's had every one of his sons say, "Your wife has a problem, she's hurting Zach." His own grandson said, "Your wife has a problem, she's hurting Zach." I said, "Your wife has a problem, she's hurting me." Valerie said, "Your wife has a problem, she's hurting Zach." And now Zach is saying the problem he has with your wife is that he was given a full bottle of Epicac. You've heard all of this. You've heard about the overdose at the doctor's when I was 7 years old. I brought this up every single year for 25 years. I have not changed anything. It's all the same. It just comes from a PTSD memory that really happened. That's all. If you ask me why I shake, why I have seizures, well, I have an answer because I know when they started. I know, and this wasn't, oh my God, this was right after I took the pills. This was terrible. Whatever my mother slipped in with my regular pills was probably a Perk 30 or some Percocet or something that reacted with the other meds. Because one thing my mother and father don't quite understand is when you mix drugs together, it creates a new reaction and a new drug. If you mix alcohol, like one shot of alcohol with 1 milligram of Ativan or Xanax, they both get stronger. Yes, the 1 milligram Xanax turns into a 4 milligram Xanax, and the one nip turns into 4 nips in your body. Yes, your body doubles both of them when you mix them together. That happens with a lot of drugs. When you take one and one, these together, it's like taking four and four. If you take them separately, it's okay, but when you take Xanax and alcohol together, they both get stronger than they normally are by themselves. And this happens with a lot of medications, especially the medications my mother wanted me on, like Zyprexa, Ritalin, Thorazine, Xanax, Seroquel, all different medications for like risperidone that was making my nipples leak. And these were the ones I memorized because I needed to know what medications I was on. This is from age 13 to 20. I did my own health care based upon my mother's decisions. My mother told me to go to this guy, I went to this guy. My mother drove me to this guy, I went to the guy. My mother told me what to say, I said it. My mother told me what pills I asked for, I asked for those pills. Until I started realizing that the more pills I took, the sicker I got.